Friday, May 22nd, 2020. Early morning, a car is pulled to the side of a quiet road in South Yorkshire. Inside the boot, there were 2 heavy suitcases with secrets. That discovery sparks an investigation that will expose a nationwide network. Months later, on a lay-by in Teesside, another stop with bundles of cash hidden in a bag links a group of men in Leeds to supply routes running deep into the northeast. By 2021, in West Yorkshire, investigators move closer to the financial brains of another £100 million empire. And in Leeds, EncroChat messages map out multi-kilo deals in cocaine and ketamine, 4 operations, 4 different networks, each believing they were untouchable but brought down by the evidence they left behind. This is the story of the British drug couriers who became criminal millionaires and how their empires finally collapsed. Welcome to UK Crime Documentaries. Let's get straight into the details. In the spring of 2020, detectives began to piece together the outlines of a network that was operating far beyond local supply. Intelligence came through in May that an organised crime group was running a nationwide trade in heroin and cocaine. At the top were 2 men, Imran Mohammed, 36, of Sheffield, and Idris Rehman, 27, of Rotherham. They were not street-level dealers, both were organisers, using the anonymity of encrypted devices to manage bulk supply and the constant movement of cash. Their instructions rippled outwards through a trusted chain. Below them were the couriers. Between March and May 2020, analysis revealed that the network had pushed out staggering volumes, 176 kilograms of cocaine and 18 kilograms of heroin. These were not street-level deals. They were wholesale consignments shifted across the country in a matter of weeks. The profits mirrored the supply. From March through June 2020, investigators estimated that the group collected more than £6.4 million in cash. This was not speculation. The figures came directly from encrypted ledgers and courier records that showed where, when, and how the money had been moved. Each run added to the total, building a picture of a criminal business running at industrial speed. Individual couriers carried their share of the load. Joshua Walshaw, 26, had the task of moving cocaine and heroin to customers and returning with payment. He was found to have delivered over 32 kilograms of cocaine and 3 kilograms of heroin in that short period. His work alone generated £651,660 in cash returns. Michael Moore, 40, and his partner, 33-year-old Sarah Jo Fisher, also worked the roads together. They were linked to 21 separate criminal exchanges, shuttling cash and consignments up and down the country. Their activity accounted for more than £2.8 million. Another courier, 38-year-old Christopher Layett, played his part too, carrying out 19 exchanges that fed close to £970,000 back into the group's hands. Each believed their role was simple: drive, deliver, and collect. But every journey kept the wheels of the operation turning. The logistics were tight, but not invisible. Surveillance teams began to note the same faces, the same vehicles, and the same patterns of movement. Exchanges were often brief, carried out in car parks, roadside laybys, or outside anonymous addresses. Each trip looked ordinary from a distance, but when investigators joined the pieces together, the picture was clear. What had seemed like small fragments were now part of a national supply chain worth millions. The group believed their system was safe. Police had already begun to prove them wrong. Apart from those members, there was the man who handled the money. Tariq Akram, 38, from Thorpe Hesley in Rotherham. His role was not on the roads, but in the counting rooms. He processed the flow of cash, using machines, elastic bands, and wrappings to keep track of millions. In May 2020, as he set off for work, officers moved in. In the boot of his car were 2 heavy suitcases packed with £1.1 million. From there, police instantly moved to search his home. At his home, a further £161,000 was discovered hidden in the basement. Around it lay cash counters and the paraphernalia of laundering, proof that Akram was the group's banker, storing and managing the profits that came in faster than most could imagine. The intelligence was clear. This was a hierarchy: ringleaders, couriers, and a banker. A professional operation hiding behind encrypted phones, moving cocaine and heroin across Britain while believing they could not be touched. Akram's arrest was the first crack in the gang's operation. What seemed like a routine traffic stop had in fact struck the heart of the gang's finances. Now detectives shifted their focus to the couriers and ringleaders who kept the supply line moving. Surveillance teams had been watching their movements for weeks, mapping out journeys, exchanges, and the flow of cash. By June 2020, they were ready to strike. The next to be intercepted was 26-year-old courier Joshua Walshaw. Traveling south on the M1 near Wakefield, he was stopped by officers who already suspected what he was carrying. Inside his vehicle was £150,000 in neatly packed bundles, another slice of the gang's turnover. His arrest confirmed the pattern investigators had pieced together and what we have covered earlier. Later that same month, the investigation reached its center. Ringleaders Imran Mohammed and Adres Rehman were arrested in coordinated action. Both men were found with encrypted phones that, when analyzed, held the records investigators needed. Messages revealed the supply of wholesale quantities of cocaine and heroin in the weeks leading up to their arrest, alongside references to the couriers collecting and moving money, which we have already discussed. For police, the devices were as valuable as the drugs themselves. They tied the leadership directly to the conspiracy. Attention then turned to the remaining couriers. Michael Moore and Sarah Jo Fisher, the pair who had worked exchanges together across the region, were detained. Christopher Lait was also arrested after investigators connected him to a further criminal exchange. Each arrest weakened the structure. What had appeared as a fluid, untouchable system of handovers and encrypted messages was now collapsing into evidence bags and case files. By the end of June 2020, the gang's key figures, its ringleaders, its couriers, and its banker, were all in custody. The final step would be the courtroom, where the scale of their operation would be laid out in full. When the case reached Leeds Crown Court, prosecutors laid out the figures. Almost 200 kilograms of cocaine and heroin supplied in less than 3 months, and more than £6.4 million laundered through courier runs and basement counting rooms. At the head of the conspiracy were the ringleaders. Imran Mohammed, 36 of Sheffield, received the longest sentence, 16 years. His counterpart, 27-year-old Adres Rehman of Rotherham, was given 14 years and 4 months. The couriers who carried the consignments were also dealt with. Joshua Walshaw was jailed for 6 years. Michael Moore and his partner, Sarah Jo Fisher, were each sentenced to 20 months. Christopher Lait was given a 12-month sentence, suspended for 18 months. The money man who counted and stored the profits had admitted his role as the banker, overseeing the processing of cash for the group. In March 2021, Tariq Akram had been jailed for 4.5 years. Police confirmed that work was already underway to strip the gang of the assets they had gained. The millions recovered in cash, along with high-value items, would be subject to forfeiture proceedings. The court made clear that the men who had run the network would not benefit from the empire they believed was secure. In Leeds, another network was building its reach. At just 22 years old, Irfan Dad of Hare Hills was already at the centre of a supply chain running deep into the northeast. He controlled vehicles, held dealer lists on his phone, and managed the movement of both drugs and cash. Though young, he operated with the confidence of someone who believed he had designed a system too careful to be caught. Around him were trusted associates. Mohammed Adil Rehem, 20, worked as a courier, handling cash and moving consignments. His journeys connected the group's Leeds base with buyers further afield. Another associate, 23-year-old Adil Habib, was observed making repeated trips to the vehicle, shifting items and concealing packages. Hassan Ahmed, 21, stored stock of products at his home. His role was to keep the supply line ready for movement whenever Dad or his couriers required it. Mohammed Lukman Dad, aged 29, was tied to the conspiracy through forensic evidence. Fingerprints placed him on cannabis packaging recovered from a vehicle, connecting him directly to the group's stock. Later, the evidence on Irfan Dad's phone painted a picture of scale. Dealer lists showed the turnover of the operation rising sharply over just a few months, from £343,365 in June 2020 to £427,625 in September. This was not static income. It was a business growing week by week, fueled by constant movement. The phone also held 65 photos and videos showing bags of white powder being weighed. Experts concluded the images displayed cocaine in various stages, from 1 kilogram stamped blocks through to powder ready for adulteration. They estimated the material pictured exceeded 9 kilograms, with a potential street value of £385,000. This was the scale of the network: a young ringleader, 4 associates, and a steady pipeline of Class A drugs and cash. On 2nd October 2020, surveillance officers monitoring activity in the northeast noticed what looked like a brief handover in a lay-by near Teesside. 2 cars pulled up, one of them a Volkswagen Golf driven by 20-year-old Mohammed Adil Rahim. From a distance, the exchange appeared ordinary, quick, discreet, and over within moments. But the officers watching knew enough to move in. When they stopped the VW Golf, the suspicion was confirmed. Inside, a designer bag sat on the seat, along with 8 further bundles of cash. When counted, the total reached £21,960. For investigators, it was not just the money itself, but the context. The cash was packaged for collection, clear evidence of a courier run in progress. This stop was more than a routine seizure. It was the first direct proof linking the Leeds group to supply lines stretching into the northeast. Until then, intelligence had suggested the existence of a network, but with the cash in hand and a courier caught in the act, police could begin to map the structure with certainty. The arrest of Rahim set the investigation into motion at speed. His connection to Irfan Dad was already known, but the bundles of cash and the method of concealment highlighted the professional scale of the operation. A young courier moving tens of thousands in one trip was not acting alone. He was part of a wider chain designed to shift cocaine north and return cash south, keeping the flow constant. From that point forward, officers tightened surveillance around Dad and his associates. Vehicles linked to the group, a BMW, an Audi TT, and a Fiesta, came under strict scrutiny. The Teesside stop had provided the opening. What followed would uncover the drugs, the DNA, and the evidence hidden in those cars. Surveillance of vehicles tied to the group began to reveal a pattern. Cars parked in back streets, drivers making quick trips in and out, items moved in a matter of seconds. Dad himself was arrested behind a takeaway on Roundhay Road in Leeds, sitting in the driver's seat of a BMW. Inside the car, police found 268 milligrams of cocaine packaged for onward supply. Disposable gloves and rolls of small plastic bags were close at hand, and forensic testing confirmed Dad's DNA on the wrapping around the drugs. The detail mattered. It placed the ringleader not just at the top of the hierarchy, but in physical possession of the trade he had been directing. Attention turned next to the Audi TT. A search revealed packages of cocaine, MDMA, and cannabis skunk, alongside dealer bags and electronic scales. Over the course of an afternoon, officers observed 23-year-old Adil Habib repeatedly returning to the vehicle, shifting items within and removing packages. DNA swabs from the door handles and gear lever matched him directly to the car and its contents. Another of the group's vehicles, a Fiesta, also yielded evidence. Cannabis skunk and cocaine were recovered, with fingerprints on the packaging matching both Habib and 29-year-old Mohammed Lukman Dad. It was another link in the chain, tying both men directly to the handling of drugs. The trail did not stop at the cars. When officers searched the home of Hassan Ahmed, they found over 1 kilogram of cannabis, 6 grams of high-purity cocaine, and 94 grams of etizolum, a Class C drug sold on the streets as Xanax. His address acted as a storage point, a small warehouse of stock ready for movement. Step by step, the pieces built into a complete picture. The Leeds group was no longer operating in the shadows. Forensic evidence, seized drugs, and cash runs had all placed them firmly in the open. When the case reached Leeds Crown Court, the scale of the evidence left little room for doubt. At just 22 years old, Irfan Dad was handed the heaviest sentence. He received 12 years in prison for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and possession of criminal property. 3 of his close associates followed. Adil Habib, 23, was sentenced to 4 years. Hassan Ahmed, 21, received 3 years and 9 months. Mohammed Adil Rehem, 20, was sentenced to 3 years and 2 months. The final member, 29-year-old Mohammed Lukman Dad, was jailed for 2 years. Together, the sentences added up to almost 25 years of jail time. With the Leeds group sentenced and their network dismantled, attention turned to another case, one where the money man himself was at the center of a plot worth hundreds of millions. By 2021, another organised crime group was beginning to surface in West Yorkshire, one with ambitions that stretched far beyond local supply. At its head was Mohammed Sadiq Khan. Investigators would later describe him as the architect of a wholesale conspiracy, directing the movement of heroin and cocaine in volumes worth hundreds of millions. His network operated quietly, using trusted runners and coded communications to shift stock across the country. The timeline ran for almost 3 years, from February 2021 until December 2023. In that period, the group moved drugs in bulk, supplying customers in multiple regions. One of the key figures beneath Khan was Courier Hayyan Alam. His downfall came in a single stop that exposed the reach of the conspiracy. Driving a car registered to him, Alam was intercepted by officers who recovered cocaine worth £1 million inside the vehicle. The seizure not only stripped the group of a significant consignment, but also placed Alam firmly within the conspiracy. For his role, he would later be sentenced to 5 years in prison. The loss of that load did not collapse the network immediately, but it provided investigators with a clear route into Khan's organization. Surveillance, phone records, and financial documents began to show the pattern. By August 2024, the evidence against Khan himself was conclusive. He appeared before Leeds Crown Court and was sentenced to 16 years in prison. Right after this, in October 2024, 32-year-old Adnan Shabir from Brighouse had been jailed for 7 years and 6 months, also for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. His role was not at street level, but as part of the logistical framework that kept the operation running. Even with Khan and Alam in custody, the investigation was far from over. Detectives knew there were others, not directing consignments or driving cars, but managing the money that made the entire network possible. While ringleader Mohammed Sadiq Khan directed the supply, another figure was responsible for keeping the numbers straight. 25-year-old Razwan Arif from Dewsbury was described simply as the accountant, the man who turned consignments into figures, figures into ledgers, and ledgers into profit. Arif's role came into focus when officers seized a laptop during the investigation. The device contained financial documents that revealed in stark detail how the organization functioned. Line after line, the records charted the wholesale turnover of heroin and cocaine across the country. It was evidence of a criminal business operating with the precision of a corporation. The sums ran into the millions, reflecting the scale of the supply Khan had established and the cash that was returning through couriers. Detectives from West Yorkshire Police's Programme Precision team analysed the files and concluded that Arif was not a minor player. He had a significant role in the conspiracy, controlling the documentation that tied the movement of stock to the profits collected. The ledgers confirmed what surveillance and seizures had already suggested. This was a £100 million operation, with Arif ensuring the financial side remained ordered and hidden from scrutiny. For prosecutors, the documents on the laptop were vital. They showed more than involvement. Arif's financial records placed him at the center of the enterprise, and his capture meant the operation had not only lost its leader, but its financial backbone. When the case came before Leeds Crown Court in June 2025, prosecutors laid out the evidence that can hardly be denied. For that role, the court handed Arif a sentence of 9 years and 6 months. Together with the earlier convictions of ringleader Mohammed Tasadiq Khan and courier Hayyan Alam, the sentencing of Arif and Shabir closed the chapter on a conspiracy worth more than £100 million. The group had moved heroin and cocaine in wholesale volumes, but it was the combination of seizures, surveillance, and financial evidence that dismantled it. By the summer of 2020, EncroChat had become the hidden language of organised crime in Britain. But when international law enforcement gained access to the system, the secrecy was gone and it became the goldmine for the investigation agencies. Thousands of conversations were exposed, and among them were the messages of a Leeds man named Timothy, also reported in some accounts as Thomas Meeran. Meeran was linked directly to the supply of at least 3 kilograms of cocaine and more than 22 kilograms of ketamine. These were not occasional sales, but wholesale quantities, distributed into Leeds and beyond during the early months of the pandemic. He was also tied to the production of cannabis, further expanding the group's portfolio. The breakthrough against him came months later. On 12th of February 2021, officers intercepted Meeran while he was on his way to complete another deal. He was carrying £20,000 in cash. The stop removed the immediate risk of another consignment moving into circulation, but it also provided the moment investigators had been waiting for. With him in custody, they could move to search his properties. At his then home in Hilton Court, Bramhope, officers recovered a half-kilogram block of high-purity cocaine. Alongside it was a testing kit used to check purity levels. A tool that confirmed his role went beyond simple distribution. The searches did not stop there. Across addresses linked to him, detectives recovered more than £113,000 in cash. In a Leeds city centre safety deposit box, they discovered a collection of high-value watches worth an estimated £300,000. The finds painted a picture of a dealer living well above the means of ordinary life, hiding his wealth not in bank accounts but in assets that could be shifted or concealed at short notice. His partner, 32-year-old Charlotte Donoghue, was also pulled into the case. At her address in Harley Green, Pudsey, police uncovered a cannabis growing system with a dozen plants. Alongside it was 2.5 kilograms of cannabis, ready to be sold. Donoghue admitted her involvement, and though her role was not at the same scale as Meeran's, it tied her directly to the production and storage of drugs. When the case came to Leeds Crown Court in July 2025, the sentences reflected the scale and seriousness of the evidence. Meeran, then 35, received a term of 10 years and 8 months for offences including supply of cocaine and ketamine, production of cannabis, and possession of criminal property. Donoghue was given a 150-hour community order for her part in the operation, recognising her lesser role but nonetheless marking her involvement. What do you make of these cases? And the sentencing was handed down. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more real UK crime stories like this, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us. There's always another case to uncover.